The mashed potatoes grew cold on my plate as my sister Jessica's laughter cut through our family's Thanksgiving dinner like broken glass. She's just admin, basic filing, and answering phones at some tiny office, she announced to her fiancé Brad, gesturing dismissively in my direction. The dining room in our parents' suburban Dallas home felt uncomfortably quiet. Brad, a tall man with kind eyes, shifted awkwardly in his chair before turning to me with genuine curiosity. "So what do you actually do, Danette?" he asked politely. I met his gaze directly and spoke one word that would change everything: owner. Silence crashed over the table like a thunderclap. 3 years earlier, my life looked completely different from the outside, though the seeds of this moment had been planted long before that fateful Thanksgiving dinner. Growing up in Richardson, Texas, Jessica and I had what most people would consider a normal middle-class childhood. Our father David spent his days balancing books at a local accounting firm, while our mother, Linda, worked as a school nurse at the elementary school just 5 minutes from our house. But normal didn't mean equal. Jessica, 2 years my senior, had always been the shining star of our family constellation. At Richardson High School, she wore the homecoming crown with natural grace, her auburn hair catching the Friday night lights as she waved to cheering crowds. Teachers adored her outgoing personality, and she had a gift for making everyone around her feel important. When she headed off to the University of Texas at Austin, she pledged the most prestigious sorority on campus and graduated with a marketing degree and a network of influential connections. Meanwhile, I chose the quieter path to Texas A&M University, where I buried myself in business courses and computer programming classes. While Jessica posted photos of elaborate sorority functions and spring break trips to Cancun, I spent my weekends in the library fascinated by emerging technologies and dreaming of applications that could revolutionize small businesses. After graduation, the contrast between us became even more pronounced. Jessica landed a marketing position at Morrison Industries, a Fortune 500 company headquartered in downtown Dallas. She had a corner cubicle business cards with embossed lettering and a salary that let her lease a luxury apartment in the trendy Deep Ellum district. Our parents beamed with pride when she brought home branded pens and coffee mugs from company events. I, on the other hand, took what appeared to be a humble administrative position at a small office in an unremarkable strip mall on the outskirts of Plano. The building sat between a nail salon and a tax preparation service, and my workplace consisted of 2 modest rooms with fluorescent lighting and mismatched furniture from secondhand stores. What my family didn't know was that I wasn't just working there. I owned the place. The business cards in my desk drawer read FlowSync Solutions, with my name underneath as founder and CEO, but I kept those hidden away. Instead, I let everyone believe I was simply an employee struggling to find my direction in life. The truth felt too fragile to share, too important to risk having diminished by well-meaning family advice, or worse, Jessica's casual dismissal. During family gatherings, Jessica would regale everyone with stories from her corporate world, while I sat quietly picking at my food and listening to her describe promotion opportunities and office politics. When relatives asked about my work, I offered vague responses about administrative tasks and helping with various projects. "Don't worry about Danette," Jessica would say with what she probably thought was sisterly affection. "She's still figuring things out. Not everyone can jump into the corporate world right away." The words stung more than she realized. While she attended client dinners and networking events, I was working 18-hour days developing restaurant management software that I believed could transform how small food service businesses operated. I had identified a gap in the market where existing systems were either too expensive for independent restaurants or too simplistic to handle their complex needs. My software, which I named FlowSync, could manage everything from inventory tracking to employee scheduling, customer relationship management to financial reporting. I had spent countless nights refining the user interface, making it intuitive enough for a busy restaurant owner to master in minutes rather than hours. The first version was crude, built on a shoestring budget with code I wrote myself during sleepless nights, fueled by energy drinks and determination. But it worked. More importantly, it solved real problems for real people. My first client was Maria, who owned a small Mexican restaurant in Garland. She had been managing her business with a combination of handwritten notes, Excel spreadsheets, and pure memory. Within a week of implementing FlowSync, she called me in tears of gratitude. Her food costs had dropped by 15% simply because she could finally track her inventory accurately. Her scheduling conflicts had disappeared, and her employees were happier because they could see their schedules online and request time off through the system. Word began to spread through the tight-knit restaurant community in the Dallas area. Maria recommended me to her friend Carlos, who owned a barbecue joint in Mesquite. Carlos told his cousin Ana, who ran a food truck that parked at different locations throughout the week. Each implementation taught me something new about the industry, and I continuously improved the software based on real-world feedback. But at family dinners, all anyone heard about was Jessica's latest marketing campaign or her team's quarterly results. I watched our parents' faces light up when she spoke about her professional achievements, and I felt the familiar pang of being overlooked. The irony wasn't lost on me that while Jessica earned praise for promoting other people's products, I was quietly building something from nothing. While she networked at cocktail parties in downtown high-rises, I was forming genuine relationships with hardworking restaurant owners who trusted me with their livelihoods. Still, I kept my secret. Part of me worried that sharing my success too early might jinx it somehow. Another part feared that my family's good intentions might overwhelm the delicate process of growing a business. But mostly, I was protecting myself from the possibility that even my own accomplishments might be diminished or dismissed. So I continued to let them see me as the quiet sister who hadn't quite found her way yet, while privately building something that would soon become much bigger than any of us could imagine. 2 years after those humble beginnings in the strip mall office, FlowSync had evolved into something I had never dared to imagine during those late nights of coding and cold pizza. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but rather through a series of small victories that gradually built into something extraordinary. The breakthrough came when Texas Monthly magazine featured an article about innovative small businesses making a difference in their communities. The journalist had visited 3 restaurants that used FlowSync and was amazed by their efficiency and profitability improvements. Without my knowledge, Maria had given them my contact information, describing me as the genius behind the technology that saved my business. The article mentioned FlowSync in passing, but it was enough. Within a week, my phone was ringing constantly with inquiries from restaurant owners across Texas who wanted to learn more about this software that was apparently revolutionizing small food service operations. I hired my first employee, Marcus, a brilliant programmer fresh out of Southern Methodist University, who understood my vision immediately. Together, we moved from the strip mall to a proper office building in downtown Plano, complete with a conference room and enough space to imagine a larger team. Marcus brought a level of technical sophistication to FlowSync that I couldn't have achieved alone. He rebuilt the core architecture to handle hundreds of simultaneous users, developed a mobile app that let restaurant managers monitor their operations from anywhere, and created integration tools that connected FlowSync to popular accounting software and payment processors. Our client base expanded rapidly. What started with Maria's single restaurant grew to include 23 establishments across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, then 50, then over 100 as word spread throughout the Texas restaurant industry. The financial transformation was staggering. Our first year's revenue was $87,000, which felt like a fortune after years of living on savings and hope. By the second year, we had crossed the $500,000 mark. I hired Sarah, a dynamic sales director who had previously worked for a major software company but wanted to be part of something smaller and more personal. Sarah brought professional sales processes and industry connections that accelerated our growth exponentially. She developed partnerships with restaurant supply companies, food service distributors, and industry associations. Through her efforts, we began attending trade shows and conferences where FlowSync quickly gained recognition as an innovative solution designed specifically for the unique challenges of independent restaurants. The team continued to grow. Tom joined as our operations manager, bringing organizational skills and customer service excellence that ensured our clients felt supported throughout their journey with FlowSync. We hired additional programmers, a marketing specialist, and customer success representatives who worked closely with restaurants to maximize their results. But perhaps the most satisfying development was the impact we were having on our clients' lives. Restaurant owners who had been drowning in paperwork and struggling with thin profit margins were suddenly reporting record profitability and newfound peace of mind. They had time to focus on food quality and customer service instead of wrestling with administrative chaos. Carlos sent me a handwritten thank you note along with photos from his daughter's graduation party, which he had been able to afford because FlowSync helped him identify and eliminate wasteful spending. Anna expanded her food truck operation into 3 trucks and a brick-and-mortar location, crediting FlowSync's scheduling and logistics features for making the growth manageable. The recognition from outside our client base began to accumulate as well. The Dallas Business Journal named me to their 40 under 40 list of emerging business leaders. The Small Business Administration featured FlowSync as a success story in their quarterly newsletter. I was invited to speak at entrepreneurship conferences and women's business networking events. But at family gatherings, none of this existed. I maintained my carefully constructed persona as a sister who was still figuring things out. I drove my reliable Honda Civic to family events instead of the BMW that I could easily afford. I dressed in simple clothes from Target, rather than the professional wardrobe that I wore to business meetings. When relatives asked about work, I continued to offer vague responses about helping businesses with their administrative needs. The deception wasn't entirely dishonest. I was helping businesses with administrative needs, just not in the way everyone imagined. And the office building where I worked was indeed modest compared to Jessica's corporate headquarters, even though I happened to own the company that occupied half the 3rd floor. The hardest part was watching my parents worry about my future during family conversations. They would exchange concerned glances when Jessica talked about her latest promotion opportunities, clearly wondering why their younger daughter seemed to lack ambition or direction. I wanted to reassure them to share the excitement of building something meaningful from nothing, but the timing never felt right. Instead, I channeled my emotions into growing the business. We developed specialized versions of FlowSync for different types of food service operations, quick service restaurants, full-service dining establishments, catering companies, and food trucks. Each variant addressed the specific workflow and regulatory requirements of its industry segment. Our reputation began to extend beyond Texas. Restaurant owners in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana started requesting demos after hearing about FlowSync through industry networks. We hired remote sales representatives to serve these expanding markets and developed online training programs to support clients across multiple time zones. By the time of that fateful Thanksgiving dinner, FlowSync Solutions employed 23 people across 6 states and generated annual revenue of over $2 million. We had been profiled in Restaurant Business Magazine and Entrepreneur Magazine. Industry analysts were tracking our growth and predicting that we would become a major player in the restaurant technology space. Yet, at family gatherings, I remained the quiet sister who answered phones and filed paperwork at some small office that nobody really understood. The contrast between my 2 worlds was becoming increasingly surreal. During the day, I led strategic planning meetings with my management team, reviewed financial projections that showed a clear path to $10 million in annual revenue within 3 years, and fielded acquisition inquiries from larger technology companies who recognized FlowSync's potential value. In the evenings, I would sit at my childhood dinner table and listen to Jessica describe the challenges of managing a marketing budget that was smaller than my monthly payroll expenses, while everyone praised her corporate sophistication and professional achievements. The secret was becoming harder to maintain, but I wasn't ready to reveal it. Not yet. I needed to be absolutely certain that what I had built was sustainable and significant before exposing it to my family's scrutiny. I had seen too many entrepreneurs who announced their ventures prematurely only to face awkward questions when things didn't develop as expected. So I continued to live in these parallel universes, building something extraordinary by day while playing the role of the underachieving sister by night. Little did I know that this careful balance was about to be shattered by Jessica's escalating need to prove her superiority, setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. The past 6 months had brought out a side of Jessica that I had never seen before, though perhaps the warning signs had always been there, buried beneath her polished exterior and social confidence. As my business continued its quiet expansion, her professional life began to hit unexpected obstacles that seemed to amplify her need to diminish mine. The first cracks appeared during Easter dinner at our parents' house in April. Jessica arrived 40 minutes late, her usually perfect makeup slightly smudged, and her designer handbag clutched tightly against her side like protective armor. She had just learned that the promotion she had been counting on had gone to Trevor, a colleague who had started at Morrison Industries 6 months after her. Instead of processing this disappointment privately, Jessica seemed to need an audience for her frustration. As we gathered around the table laden with our mother's traditional glazed ham and spring vegetables, she launched into a detailed explanation of how office politics and favoritism had cost her the advancement she deserved. "You know what the problem is with corporate America," she announced, sawing aggressively at her ham. "It's not about merit anymore. It's about who you know and how well you play games that have nothing to do with actual performance." Our father nodded sympathetically, and our mother made supportive murmurs while refilling water glasses. I listened quietly, genuinely feeling sorry for my sister's disappointment. Workplace setbacks were never easy, regardless of the circumstances. But then Jessica's frustration found a new target. "At least some of us are trying to build real careers," she said, glancing pointedly in my direction. "Some of us are fighting the good fight in the professional world instead of just drifting along without any real direction or ambition." The comment stung particularly because I had spent the previous week finalizing a contract with a restaurant chain that would bring in $300,000 in annual recurring revenue. But I bit my tongue and continued eating, telling myself that Jessica was just having a bad day. The pattern escalated during our mother's birthday celebration in June. Jessica had made reservations at an upscale steakhouse in downtown Dallas, the kind of place where the servers wore black ties and the wine list required serious study. She insisted on picking up the check, making a show of presenting her corporate credit card to demonstrate her financial success. As we waited for dessert, she began telling stories about her work projects with an edge of desperation that I found troubling. Every anecdote seemed designed to highlight her importance and expertise, but underneath the confident delivery, I sensed anxiety about her, standing within the company. "The thing is," she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "you really have to understand corporate strategy to succeed in today's business environment. It's not enough to just show up and do basic tasks anymore. You need to think big picture, understand market dynamics, anticipate client needs." She paused dramatically, then turned to me with what looked like sympathetic concern but felt more like condescension. "Danette, you really should consider going back to school for an MBA or at least some business certificates." I know it's intimidating to think about competing in the professional world, but you can't just answer phones and file papers forever. At some point, you need to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. Our parents exchanged that familiar, worried glance, and I saw our mother's face soften with concern for my apparent lack of direction. The irony was overwhelming. Earlier that same week, I had been interviewed by Forbes magazine for an article about young entrepreneurs who were disrupting traditional industries. The journalist had been fascinated by FlowSync's rapid growth and had asked probing questions about my vision for the future of restaurant technology. But here at this expensive restaurant surrounded by my own family, I was being lectured about the need to develop professional ambition. The situation reached a new low during our family's 4th of July barbecue. Jessica arrived with Brad, whom she had been dating for 3 months at that point. He seemed like a genuinely nice man with an easy smile and a respectful manner that made a positive impression on our parents immediately. Brad owned a successful real estate development company that specialized in commercial properties, and he had an obvious appreciation for entrepreneurship and business innovation. During the afternoon, I found myself enjoying conversations with him about market trends and economic developments in the Dallas area. But Jessica couldn't seem to tolerate the attention I was receiving from her new boyfriend, even though our discussions were purely professional and friendly. As the evening progressed, she began making increasingly pointed comments about my supposed lack of ambition and career direction. Brad, you should meet my sister Danette, she said with artificial sweetness while we stood around the grill waiting for our father to finish cooking the burgers. She's the one who hasn't quite figured out what she wants to do with her life yet. Still working in basic administration, but maybe someday she'll find her calling. Brad looked confused by the introduction, clearly unsure how to respond to such a dismissive characterization of a family member. "What kind of administrative work do you do, Danette?" he asked politely. Before I could answer, Jessica jumped in with a laugh that sounded more bitter than amused. "Oh, filing answering phones, typical entry-level stuff. Nothing too demanding or complicated." I felt my face flush with embarrassment, not because there was anything wrong with administrative work, but because of the deliberate cruelty in Jessica's tone. She was using my supposed professional shortcomings as entertainment for her new relationship, turning my perceived failures into a way to highlight her own success. Brad seemed uncomfortable with the dynamic, but Jessica was just getting started. Throughout the evening, she found ways to reference my dead-end job and lack of professional direction in front of our extended family and family friends who had joined us for the celebration. The final straw came in late September when Jessica and Brad attended our cousin Rachel's wedding. I had been asked to serve as a bridesmaid, which meant sitting at the head table during the reception dinner. Jessica and Brad were seated at a nearby table with other family members and close friends of the bride. During the reception, the conversation naturally turned to careers and life updates. Various relatives shared news about promotions, job changes, and professional achievements. When attention turned to our table, Jessica took the opportunity to deliver what felt like a prepared speech about her marketing successes and her promising future with Morrison Industries. "And of course, my sister Danette is still working on figuring out her path," she announced to the table of 8 people. "She's been doing administrative work for a few years now, but I keep telling her that she needs to think bigger. You can't just coast along doing filing and basic office tasks forever." The comment was made with a patronizing smile, but the impact on our extended family was clear. Suddenly, I was the object of sympathetic looks and well-meaning but misguided career advice from relatives who had no idea what I actually did for a living. Brad looked increasingly uncomfortable with Jessica's need to publicly diminish me. I watched him study my face during these moments, and I could see him processing the disconnect between Jessica's descriptions and the confident, articulate woman he had been having substantive conversations with all evening. The breaking point was approaching, though I didn't realize it at the time. Jessica's insecurity about her own professional struggles was manifesting as an increasingly vicious need to tear me down in front of others. She seemed to believe that making me look unsuccessful would somehow validate her own achievements and relationship. But she had no idea that her casual cruelty was about to collide with a reality that would shatter not just her assumptions about me, but her relationship with Brad and her standing within our family. The foundation she thought she was standing on was about to shift dramatically, and the sister she had been dismissing as a failure was about to reveal just how spectacularly wrong she had been. 2 weeks before that life-changing Thanksgiving dinner, Jessica's engagement party took place at the prestigious Brookhaven Country Club, where perfectly manicured golf courses stretched toward the horizon and crystal chandeliers cast elegant light over rooms filled with Dallas's social and professional elite. The event was Jessica's moment to shine, her opportunity to announce her engagement to Brad in front of an audience that represented everything she valued about success and status. I should have known from the seating chart that the evening was going to be challenging. While Brad's business associates, college friends, and professional contacts were seated at prime tables near the front of the room, I found myself assigned to what Jessica called the family kids table in the back corner. My table mates included our teenage cousins, Emma and Jake, both high school students, who were more interested in their phones than the elaborate dinner service. The placement was a deliberate slight, and everyone knew it. At 28 years old with a college degree and several years of professional experience, I was hardly a candidate for the children's table. But Jessica had orchestrated the seating to make a point about my place in the family hierarchy. "I hope you don't mind sitting with the younger crowd," she had said earlier while showing me to my assigned seat. "I figured you'd be more comfortable there since you're still, finding your professional footing." The condescension was so thick it was almost choking, but I managed a polite smile and took my place among the teenagers. From my corner table, I had a clear view of the main action, but was effectively isolated from the adult conversations and networking opportunities that filled the rest of the room. Jessica looked stunning that evening in a floor-length navy dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, introducing Brad to family members and accepting congratulations with the poise of someone who had always expected this level of attention and success. Brad, to his credit, made an effort to include me in conversations throughout the cocktail hour. He introduced me to his business partners and friends as Jessica's sister, Danette. And I could tell he was genuinely trying to make me feel welcome despite the awkward seating arrangement. But Jessica seemed determined to control the narrative about who I was and what I represented. "You should meet my sister," she told Brad's mother, Margaret, during a conversation I could overhear from the nearby bar area. "She's the one I was telling you about, who's still trying to figure out her career path. Sweet girl, but not really the ambitious type like some of us. She does filing and administrative work at some small office." Margaret, a distinguished woman in her 60s who had built her own successful interior design business, looked puzzled by this description. "What kind of business is it?" she asked with genuine interest. "Oh, nothing too exciting," Jessica replied with a dismissive wave. "Just basic office work, answering phones, organizing files, that sort of thing. Nothing that requires any real business skills or strategic thinking." I felt my cheeks burn as I listened to this characterization of my life's work. For 3 years, I had been building FlowSync from nothing into a multi-million-dollar company that employed nearly 24 people and served hundreds of businesses across the Southwest. I had developed innovative technology, built strategic partnerships, and created systems that were genuinely improving people's lives and livelihoods. But in Jessica's version of reality, I was a glorified receptionist who lacked the ambition and intelligence to pursue anything more challenging. The most painful moment came during the formal dinner service when Jessica stood to address the gathered crowd. She spoke beautifully about her relationship with Brad, their shared values and dreams for the future. and her gratitude for the love and support of family and friends. Then she shifted to a topic that made my stomach drop. You know, success in life isn't just about individual achievement, she said, her voice carrying easily across the elegant dining room. It's about lifting up the people around you and helping them reach their potential. Some people are natural leaders who see opportunities and seize them, while others need guidance and encouragement to find their way. She paused dramatically, her gaze sweeping across the room before landing directly on my corner table. I'm grateful to have found a partner who shares my belief that some people are meant for bigger things, while others are perfectly happy in supporting roles. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. The world needs people who are content with simpler lives and basic responsibilities. The message was crystal clear to everyone in the room. Jessica was publicly categorizing me as someone who lacked the vision and capability for significant achievement, someone who needed to be looked after and guided by more successful family members like herself. I felt the familiar sting of tears behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of this audience. Instead, I excused myself from the table and stepped outside onto the country club's terrace, where the cool October air provided relief from the suffocating atmosphere of judgment and condescension. That's where Brad found me 10 minutes later. Are you okay? He asked, genuine concern evident in his voice. You looked upset when you left the dining room. I considered offering some polite excuse about needing fresh air, but something about his kind expression and obvious sincerity made me speak more honestly than I had intended. It's just difficult being characterized as a failure in front of a room full of strangers, I said quietly. I know Jessica means well, but sometimes her way of building herself up involves tearing other people down. Brad was quiet for a long moment, studying my face in the soft light from the terrace lanterns. Can I ask you something that might sound weird? He finally said. I nodded, curious about what he was thinking. Jessica keeps describing you as someone who does basic filing and administrative work, but every conversation I've had with you tonight has been about business strategy, market analysis, and industry trends. You talk about these topics with the kind of insight that usually comes from real-world experience, not theoretical knowledge. My heart started beating faster as I realized how carefully he had been listening during our brief conversations throughout the evening. Plus, he continued, there's something about the way you carry yourself that doesn't match the picture she's painting. You're confident without being arrogant, knowledgeable without being pretentious, and you ask the kind of questions that suggest you understand business operations from the inside. I felt trapped between my desire to maintain family harmony and my growing frustration with being misrepresented so completely. Brad was clearly intelligent enough to recognize the inconsistencies in Jessica's narrative, but revealing the truth felt like a betrayal of the careful secrecy I had maintained for years. Maybe Jessica and I just have different perspectives on what constitutes meaningful work, I said diplomatically. Brad nodded slowly, but I could see that my non-answer had only increased his curiosity rather than satisfying it. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and polite conversations. I watched Jessica accept congratulations and admiration from the assembled guests while continuing to reference my supposed lack of direction and achievement whenever the opportunity arose. But I also noticed Brad watching me more carefully, his expression growing increasingly thoughtful as the evening progressed. During the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted, that the careful balance I had maintained between my two worlds was becoming increasingly unsustainable. 2 weeks later, as I sat at our family's Thanksgiving table listening to Jessica deliver her familiar lecture about my professional shortcomings, I realized that the moment of truth had finally arrived. Brad's direct question about what I actually did for work was the opening I had been unconsciously waiting for, the chance to finally reveal the reality that Jessica had been unknowingly mocking for months. The secret that had protected me for so long was about to become the truth that would change everything. The silence that followed my single word answer stretched across our family's dining room like a frozen moment in time. Brad's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Our father's hand paused while reaching for the cranberry sauce, and even my normally chatty Aunt Patricia fell completely quiet. But it was Jessica's face that captured my attention most completely. The confident smirk that had been playing at the corners of her mouth slowly dissolved into confusion, then disbelief. Owner, Jessica repeated, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow in the sudden quiet. Owner of what exactly? That little office where you answer phones. Brad set down his fork and leaned forward slightly, his business instincts clearly engaged. What's the name of your company, Danette? The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no turning back. Flow Sync Solutions, I said clearly, my voice steadier than I felt. We develop restaurant management software. I watched Brad's eyes widen as the name registered. As someone who invested in commercial real estate, including restaurant properties, he was familiar with the industry and the technology companies that served it. Flow Sync Solutions, he repeated slowly. The company that's been getting all the buzz in the restaurant industry trade magazines? Jessica looked back and forth between us, her confusion deepening. What are you talking about, Danette? What game are you playing here? But Brad wasn't paying attention to Jessica anymore. His focus was entirely on me, and I could see his mind working through implications and connections that were suddenly clicking into place. I've been reading about Flow Sync for months, he said, his voice filled with growing amazement. Restaurant Business Magazine did a cover story about innovative software solutions, and Flow Sync was featured prominently. The article talked about how the company was founded by a young entrepreneur who understood the industry from the ground up. Our parents sat frozen in their chairs, clearly struggling to process this unexpected turn in what had started as Jessica's familiar put-down session. Our mother's face showed a mixture of confusion and dawning realization, while our father's expression suggested he was trying to reconcile this new information with years of assumptions about my professional life. This is ridiculous, Jessica said, her voice rising slightly. Danette, stop this nonsense. You work in administration. You've told us 100 times that you do filing and answer phones. I pulled out my phone and navigated to the FlowSync website, turning the screen toward the table so everyone could see. The homepage featured a professional photograph of me in business attire with the title Danette Crawford, founder and CEO, prominently displayed beneath my image. The room erupted in a chaos of voices as everyone tried to speak at once, but Brad's voice cut through the confusion with laser-sharp focus. You're D. Crawford, he said, pointing at my photo on the website. I've been trying to get a meeting with you for 8 months. This revelation hit Jessica like a physical blow. Her face went pale and she gripped the edge of the table as if she needed something solid to hold on to. That's impossible, she whispered. Brad, you're confused. This is my sister Danette. She does basic office work. She's never even mentioned any software company. But Brad was pulling out his own phone, scrolling through his contacts and business emails. Look, he said, showing Jessica his screen. Here's my assistant's notes about trying to schedule a meeting with FlowSync Solutions. We want to implement their system across all our restaurant properties. He looked up at me with something approaching awe. Your software is exactly what we've been looking for. We've been managing our restaurant tenants' needs with 3 different systems that don't talk to each other. FlowSync could streamline everything. Our father cleared his throat, speaking for the first time since my revelation. Danette, honey, I'm not sure I understand. Are you saying you own a software company? How is that possible? You never told us about any of this. The questions started coming from all directions. Our mother wanted to know how long this had been going on. Our Aunt Patricia demanded to know why I had kept it secret. Even our teenage cousins were suddenly paying attention, looking up from their phones to stare at me with new interest. But it was Jessica's reaction that broke my heart. Instead of pride or excitement for my success, her face showed only betrayal and anger. You lied to us, she said, her voice shaking. For years, you sat there and let us think you were a failure. You let me worry about you, give you advice about your career, try to help you figure out your life, when all along you were running some big, successful company. I felt the weight of years of deception settling on my shoulders. I didn't lie, Jessica. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing, she snapped. You made me look like an idiot talking about your lack of ambition when you were apparently some big shot CEO the whole time. Brad was studying both of us with growing understanding, and I could see him putting together pieces of a puzzle that painted an uncomfortable picture of his fiance's behavior. Jessica, he said carefully, how exactly have you been describing Danette's work to people? The question hung in the air like an accusation, and Jessica's face flushed red as she realized the implications of what he was asking. I've been honest about what I knew, she said defensively. She told me she did administrative work. She never corrected me when I described her job to other people. But you didn't just describe her job, Brad said, his voice growing colder. You've been actively diminishing her achievements and making jokes about her lack of success. Even tonight, you introduced her to my parents as someone who just does filing. Our parents exchanged a glance that suggested they were remembering years of similar conversations, moments when they had accepted Jessica's characterization of my professional life without questioning whether there might be more to the story. How successful is FlowSync? Our father asked quietly, clearly trying to understand the scope of what I had been hiding. I took a deep breath, knowing that there was no point in holding back anymore. We have 237 restaurant clients across 6 states. Last year's revenue was $2.4 million. We employ 23 people. The silence that followed this statement was deafening. Jessica's face had gone from red to pale to something approaching green as she processed the magnitude of what I had just revealed. $2.4 million, our mother repeated weakly. Danette, are you saying your company made $2.4 million last year? That's just revenue, I clarified. But yes, we're profitable and growing rapidly. Brad was shaking his head in amazement. Jessica, do you realize what this means? Your sister isn't just successful, she's built something extraordinary. FlowSync is revolutionizing restaurant operations across the region. But instead of pride or excitement, Jessica's expression showed only humiliation and anger. The foundation of her identity as a successful sister, the one who had figured out how to navigate the professional world while I struggled with basic employment, had just crumbled beneath her feet. Oh, and I need some air, she said abruptly, pushing back from the table and walking quickly toward the back patio. Brad watched her go, then turned back to me with an expression that mixed admiration with something that looked like disappointment in his fiancée. Danette, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. I had no idea Jessica had been treating you this way, but I should have recognized the signs. No one deserves to be diminished like that, especially by family. As the truth continued to unfold around our Thanksgiving table, I realized that this moment would change not just how my family saw me, but how they saw Jessica as well. The sister who had seemed so confident and successful was about to face the consequences of years of cruelty masked as concern, and the quiet sister she had dismissed was about to claim her rightful place in the family narrative. The 20 minutes that Jessica spent on our parents' back patio gave the rest of us time to dive deeper into the reality of what I had built, and the conversations that unfolded revealed just how completely our family dynamics were about to shift. Brad immediately began asking detailed questions about FlowSync's technology and market position, displaying the kind of business acumen that had made him successful in his own field. As I explained our software's capabilities and growth trajectory, I watched my parents' faces transform from confusion to pride to something approaching awe. Show them the Restaurant Business Magazine article, Brad suggested, and I pulled it up on my phone. The cover story featured a large photo of me standing in FlowSync's office, surrounded by my team with the headline, Young Innovators Reshaping Food Service Technology. Our father read the article aloud, his voice growing stronger with each paragraph that detailed my company's achievements and impact on the restaurant industry. The piece quoted several restaurant owners describing how FlowSync had transformed their operations, increased their profitability, and given them the tools they needed to compete in an increasingly challenging market. Mariah Gonzalez, owner of Casa Maria in Garland, credits FlowSync with saving her family business. Our father read. The software helped us identify cost savings we never knew existed and streamlined operations that had been chaos for 20 years. Our mother was furiously Googling my name on her phone, finding article after article about FlowSync's success and my recognition as an emerging business leader. The Dallas Business Journal piece that named me to their 40 under 40 list included a professional headshot so different from my casual family appearance that she had to look back and forth between the photo and my face several times to confirm it was really me. Danette, she said, her voice trembling slightly, there are dozens of articles about you online. Forbes Entrepreneur Magazine, The Wall Street Journal. When did all this happen? How did we not know? Before I could answer, our Aunt Patricia raised a question that cut to the heart of the family dynamics that had enabled this situation to develop. How many times over the years have we sat at dinner tables like this one, listening to Jessica talk about her corporate job while assuming Danette was struggling professionally? The question hung in the air like an indictment, forcing everyone to confront their own role in perpetuating a narrative that had been not just wrong, but actively harmful to me. Brad was scrolling through business publications on his phone, finding more coverage of FlowSync's rapid growth and industry recognition. Look at this, he said, showing the screen to our parents. Insert magazine ranked FlowSync as one of the fastest growing private companies in Texas last year. The article says they predict it could become a $100 million company within 5 years. That's when Jessica returned from the patio, her eyes red and her composure clearly shaken. She had obviously been crying, but there was also something harder in her expression, a defensive anger that suggested she wasn't ready to accept responsibility for her behavior. So, what's the plan here? She said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Are we all supposed to pretend that Danette didn't spend 3 years lying to her own family? Are we going to ignore the fact that she let us worry about her future while she was secretly running some $1 million company? Brad's response was swift and sharp. Jessica, the lying isn't the issue here. The issue is how you've been treating your sister for years, using her supposed lack of success as a way to make yourself feel better about your own career frustrations. The accuracy of this observation hit Jessica like a slap. Her face flushed red as she realized that her own behavior was about to be scrutinized as intensely as my secrecy had been. That's not fair, she protested. I was trying to help her. I was encouraging her to be more ambitious, to think bigger about her career options. How was I supposed to know she was already more successful than all of us combined? Our father, who had been quietly processing everything, finally spoke up with a kind of measured tone that had made him an effective accountant for 30 years. Jessica, helping someone and humiliating them aren't the same thing. Looking back on family gatherings over the past few years, I can see that your encouragement often sounded more like public criticism. The conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing. The caller ID showed Sarah, my sales director, and I hesitated before answering. Go ahead, Brad encouraged. I'd actually love to hear about your business operations. I answered the call, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. Sarah's voice filled the dining room with professional enthusiasm as she updated me on a major contract negotiation that was progressing ahead of schedule. Danette, the Regional Restaurant Association, wants to feature FlowSync as their preferred technology partner for next year's conference, she reported. They're projecting that the partnership could bring us over 300 new clients in the next 18 months. As I discussed implementation timelines and revenue projections with Sarah, I watched my family's faces register the reality of my professional life. This wasn't just a successful small business, it was a rapidly growing company with significant industry recognition and expansion potential. When I ended the call, Brad immediately started asking about FlowSync's scalability and long-term strategic vision. His questions were sophisticated and insightful, the kind that demonstrated genuine respect for what I had built. But Jessica couldn't seem to process what she was witnessing. Instead of celebrating my success or acknowledging her mistakes, she seemed determined to minimize the significance of what FlowSync represented. "It's still just a software company," she said dismissively. "It's not like you're running General Motors or anything. You're selling computer programs to restaurants." The comment revealed so much about Jessica's fundamental misunderstanding of business and innovation that Brad actually winced. As someone who worked in commercial real estate and understood the value of technology solutions, he recognized the ignorance behind her dismissal. Jessica," he said slowly, "what Danette has built is exactly the kind of innovation that drives economic growth. She identified a market need, developed a solution, and scaled it successfully across multiple states. That's not easy to do, and it's certainly not insignificant." He paused, studying Jessica's face with growing concern. "More importantly, she's been doing all of this while listening to you publicly describe her as a failure who needs career guidance. Can you imagine how that must have felt?" For the first time since my revelation, Jessica seemed to grasp the full implications of what had been happening. The sister she had been patronizing for years wasn't just successful, she was dramatically more successful than Jessica herself. Every piece of career advice, every public comment about my lack of ambition, every concerned conversation about my future had been not just unnecessary, but actively cruel. Our mother, who had been unusually quiet during this exchange, finally spoke up with a question that went to the heart of our family dynamics. "Danette, why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us worry about you when you were actually doing so well?" It was a fair question, and one I had been asking myself for months as the secret became increasingly difficult to maintain. At first, I wanted to be sure the business would succeed before I told anyone, I admitted. But as time went on, I realized that keeping it secret protected me from having my achievements diminished or dismissed. I've watched too many family conversations where anything I said about work was either ignored or used as evidence of my lack of direction. The honesty of this response seemed to hit everyone differently. Our parents looked guilty as they recognized their own role in creating an environment where I felt safer hiding success than sharing it. Brad looked angry on my behalf, clearly understanding the emotional cost of being consistently underestimated by the people who should have been my biggest supporters. But Jessica looked devastated, and for the first time, I saw her beginning to understand the true impact of her behavior. The confident, successful sister who had spent years positioning herself as my superior was confronting the reality that she had been not just wrong, but cruel in her assumptions and treatment of me. The reversal was complete. The family dynamic that had defined us for years had been shattered, and we were all going to have to figure out how to rebuild relationships based on truth rather than assumptions. The weeks following that Thanksgiving dinner brought changes to our family that I never could have anticipated, transformations that went far deeper than simply correcting misconceptions about my professional life. What emerged was a complete restructuring of relationships, expectations, and the very foundation of how we understood success, family loyalty, and personal growth. The most immediate change involved Jessica and Brad's relationship. Within 3 days of our family dinner, Brad called off the engagement. He didn't make the decision, lightly or cruelly, but rather through a series of conversations that revealed fundamental differences in values and character that he couldn't ignore. I fell in love with someone I thought was confident and successful, he told me during a private coffee meeting the following week. But confidence built on diminishing others isn't real confidence at all. And success that requires putting family members down isn't the kind of success I want to be part of. He had been particularly troubled by Jessica's reaction to my revelation. Instead of celebrating my achievements or acknowledging her mistakes, she had spent the days following Thanksgiving trying to minimize Flow Sync's significance and justify her years of dismissive behavior. She kept saying things like, "Well, it's not like it's a real corporation," or "Anyone can start a software company these days," Brad explained. She couldn't just admit she was wrong and be happy for you. That told me everything I needed to know about her character. The end of Jessica's engagement sent shockwaves through our extended family and social circle, but it also created space for more authentic conversations about success, competition, and what it means to support the people we love. Our parents, to their credit, took responsibility for their role in enabling the dynamic that had hurt me for years. They arranged for family counseling sessions with Dr. Amanda Ross, a therapist who specialized in family systems and sibling relationships. We got caught up in surface appearances, our father admitted during one particularly difficult session. Jessica's corporate job looked like success in a way we understood, while Danette's entrepreneurial path seemed risky and uncertain. We unconsciously reinforced Jessica's narrative because it fit our expectations. Our mother was even more direct in her accountability. "I failed you, Danette," she said through tears during a private conversation. "I let my own anxieties about your future blind me to what you were actually accomplishing. A mother should recognize her daughter's strength and success, not worry about imaginary problems." The healing process wasn't linear or easy. Jessica went through stages of denial, anger, bargaining, and depression before finally reaching something approaching acceptance and genuine remorse. She lost not just her relationship with Brad, but several friendships with people who were troubled by the stories that emerged about her treatment of family members. The lowest point came about 6 weeks after Thanksgiving when Jessica showed up at my office building unannounced, asking to talk. She looked exhausted and humbled in a way I had never seen before, her usual polished appearance replaced by simple clothes and minimal makeup that revealed the emotional toll of recent events. "I need to understand something," she said as we sat in my company's conference room surrounded by the visible evidence of FlowSync's success. "Were you ever really struggling professionally, or was it all an act?" The question revealed how little she had understood about my journey, even after everything that had been revealed. "I was never struggling, Jessica," I explained patiently. "I was building something from nothing, which is completely different. Some of the hardest work I've ever done happened during those early months when FlowSync was just an idea and a few lines of code." She was quiet for a long time, processing this distinction between struggle and growth, between uncertainty and failure. "I think I understand now why you kept it secret," she finally said. "You knew I would find ways to diminish it or make it about my own insecurities." That admission marked the beginning of genuine change in Jessica's approach to our relationship and her own life. She started therapy to address the competitive patterns and insecurity that had driven her need to put me down. She also made the difficult decision to leave Morrison Industries and start her own marketing consultancy, wanting to understand firsthand what it meant to build something independent and meaningful. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was real. Jessica's new business venture gave her genuine empathy for the challenges and uncertainties of entrepreneurship. When she faced her first major setback, a lost client that threatened her company's survival, She called me for advice with humility that would have been impossible for the old Jessica. I don't know how you did this alone for so long, she admitted. The responsibility of having other people depend on your success is terrifying. I used to think running your own business was easier than working for a corporation, but I was completely wrong about that too. I helped her navigate the crisis, connecting her with potential clients through my business network and sharing the lessons I had learned about persistence and adaptation during Flow Sync's early challenges. Watching Jessica struggle and grow through her own entrepreneurial journey was more satisfying than any apology could have been. Meanwhile, FlowSync continued to flourish in ways that exceeded my most optimistic projections. The publicity generated by family members sharing articles about the company's success led to new client inquiries and partnership opportunities. Brad's real estate company became one of our largest clients, implementing FlowSync across 15 restaurant properties with outstanding results. More importantly, the emotional energy I had been spending on managing family dynamics was redirected into business growth and innovation. We launched Flow Sync 2.0 with artificial intelligence features that could predict inventory needs and optimize staffing schedules. The enhanced platform attracted attention from national restaurant chains and technology investors. By the 1 year anniversary of that Thanksgiving dinner, FlowSync had grown to 63 employees across 9 states with annual revenue approaching $8 million. We had been featured on the cover of Fast Company magazine and had received acquisition offers from 3 major software companies. But the most meaningful change was in my relationship with my family. Our parents learned to see and celebrate my achievements without needing to compare them to Jessica's path. They started attending FlowSync company events and meeting my employees, taking genuine pride in what I had built. Jessica and I developed a new kind of sisterly relationship based on mutual respect rather than false assumptions. She became one of my most effective advocates, correcting misconceptions when people underestimated my business or suggesting FlowSync to restaurant owners in her network. I used to think success meant making other people look small, she told me during a recent family dinner. But watching you build FlowSync taught me that real success creates opportunities for other people. Your company doesn't just make money, it helps restaurant owners achieve their dreams. The lesson that emerged from our family's transformation was profound and lasting. Success isn't about appearing impressive to others or maintaining superiority over the people closest to you. True achievement comes from creating value-solving problems and building something meaningful that extends beyond your own immediate needs. We learned that families can recover from years of misunderstanding and hurt, but only when everyone commits to honest self-examination and genuine change. We discovered that supporting each other's success doesn't diminish our own achievements, but rather creates a foundation for everyone to reach their highest potential. Most importantly, I learned that keeping secrets to protect yourself from judgment isn't sustainable in the long term. The energy spent hiding your light diminishes your ability to shine as brightly as you could when surrounded by people who truly see and celebrate your worth. Today, when someone asks about my family, I talk about my parents who raised 2 successful entrepreneurs and my sister who had the courage to confront her own limitations and rebuild her approach to life and relationships. I describe people who learn that love and support look like celebration rather than competition and encouragement rather than control. The woman who once sat quietly at family dinners while being described as a failure now stands confidently in rooms full of business leaders sharing the story of how she built a company that makes a difference in the world. But more than that, she stands in her own family as someone whose worth is finally recognized and celebrated. Have you ever found yourself hiding your achievements to avoid judgment from the people closest to you? Have you experienced the pain of being underestimated by family members who should be your biggest supporters? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below about how you've navigated family dynamics and found the courage to let your light shine. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming challenges and finding your authentic voice. Share this with someone who might need encouragement to pursue their dreams despite doubts from others, and remember that your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to recognize your potential. Thank you for listening to my journey from secret success to family healing. May you find the courage to claim your rightful place in every room you enter, and may the people who love you learn to celebrate your achievements instead of diminishing them. Until next time, keep building something beautiful with your life.